So to thread the sewing machine, the first thing to do is to turn the hand wheel in the sewing direction, which is only in this direction. And make sure that the needle rises up, but more importantly that the take-up lever come to the top upper position. And that is true when you start a seam or stop a seam or thread the machine. Make sure that you turn the hand wheel, keep an eye on this lever, and when it comes to the top, that is the beginning of a stitch. So to thread the machine, use good quality polyester thread, put it on the spool pin, make sure that it goes through the little slot of the guide, first guide, into the second guide. Make sure that your presser foot is lifted up. So this presser foot is up. Then go behind this little bar. Make sure that the thread goes in between the discs, not behind it like this, not in front of it, but in between those little discs. And this is where it's really important to get this threaded properly. Hold on to the thread, and with it in between the discs, make sure that it hooks into this little check spring, and keep pulling until it hooks over that little hook, so that when you pull it, the check spring moves like this. Then just slide the thread behind this little bar, so now that the thread can move up like this. Then pass the thread from the right to the left through the take-up lever, like that. There's a little curlicue guide, another guide here. There's a small guide over the needle, and then you can thread the needle from the left to the right. And when you insert the needle into the machine, make sure that the needle, when you slide it up, that the flat side of the needle is to the right. So the needle itself has a flat spot on it. So you're going to thread the needle from the left to the right, like that. And then when you lift up the presser foot, you can lift it up one setting or two, and you always want to push it up to the second setting, because that will release this tension. So by holding the thread with one hand, you can turn the hand wheel one rotation, watching this take-up lever goes down, and then as the take-up lever comes to the very top again, it will pull up the bobbin thread, except I forgot to put it in there, so let's go ahead and put that in. So to put the bobbin case in, pull the latch and make sure that that holds the bobbin so it doesn't come out. You can slide this open, and holding it like this with this arm facing up, you can just slide it into place and make sure that it locks all the way in and it doesn't fall out. Then you can close this little door, leave a little gap here so the thread isn't pinched, and then you can draw the thread up by turning the hand wheel one rotation. Going down, the needle comes up, but more importantly that this take-up lever comes up so it can draw the thread from underneath up. And you'll notice that it pulled up the bobbin thread. So now I have two threads, the upper thread and the bobbin thread. I can slide both of them underneath the foot, close that little thing, and it's ready to sew. Always keep your tension somewhere around 5. You can move it if you need to change tension because of variations of the thread or the fabric, but by and large, leave it right on 5. If you need to change some of the settings, you have a length of stitch here, which moves this little indicator. So a 4 would be a 4 millimeter long stitch. It's a long stitch. So the distance between one stitch and the next is 4 millimeters. And it gets smaller and smaller to 2 millimeters to 1 millimeter to where it isn't feeding at all. It'll just sew in one spot. So this is the length of stitch. This is your reverse button that's associated with the length. It just goes in reverse. This control here is the width of stitch, and it's spring loaded, so you have to move the holder over. So when it's on 0, it's only a straight stitch. It's only one dimension. If you move it over to say 5 and push this little holder over and tighten the screw, it'll hold that in 5. Now it will do a 5mm width zigzag. Excuse me. So I can move this over to, say, you can move it to like a 2mm, 2.5mm, and that's a much narrower zigzag. And eventually it will go narrower and narrower until it's just a straight stitch. So that's pretty much how to use this machine.